What is up, everybody, and welcome to this very special edition of the Parsec Gaming Show. I am joined, as usual, by my lovely co-host, Alex. Alex, say what's up.
Hey, what's up,
What's up?
everybody?
And we're actually joined by another Alex here today. We are joined by the LowSpecGamer. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing fine. This is gonna be confusing with two Alexes, but I think we will manage.
Yes, we got two Alexes with us today. So, shall I just call you LowSpecGamer for the duration of the interview, just to make it a bit easier?
Yes, low spec.
Cool. Low spec it is. Low Spec Gamer has a very interesting channel on YouTube for those of you who don't know about it. He makes videos that are dedicated to finding ways of playing games on low-end computers. So that means sort of lowering down the game settings and doing little tips and tricks on just how to get these new high-end games to play on low-end PCs. Is that a good justification for what you do?
Yes.
Alright, cool. To begin with, could you just give us a little bit of a rundown of your channel? I know I gave us one there, and just explain to us what it is you do over there and why you do it.
Right. So, it has evolved a little bit through the years, but the base thing that I do is just find ways of reducing video game graphics to as low as I can get away with, in order to see what sort of performance I can get in low-end computers, and see if I can pretty much get a game working under its minimum requirements. In the same vein, I also use a lot of techniques to sort of push low-end hardware to its maximum that I can get away with. And just everything that is related with that. Obviously, that means experimenting with building PCs using like trash components, extremely obsolete stuff, or my latest video at this point, which is gaming on calculators, which it sort of works on the theme, all right. As long as it means running games under what they're supposed to work with, that's usually my thing, especially if it involves very low graphics.
Yeah, I mean it's incredible. The first time I found out about your channel was the Rocket League video,
Yeah, I remember that one. Yeah.
and basically it was on NewGaf, and somebody posted a video. I saw the video, and I was impressed on how different the game looked on such incredibly low specs. And your channel is one of those channels that are really useful for all kind of gamers, and your content is so different and unique, and I'm a big fan, honestly.
Thank you. Yeah, that is partially what I wanted to do, because when I was starting to work on the idea and the concept of the channel, I was very frustrated on the leading narrative on PC gaming, which is, you have the highest specs and the highest graphics, and that sort of association of PC gaming with that sort of PC master race didn't really represent the way I played, or the way many of my friends played, or the way I think many people just play on their PC. And I wanted to do something that, like, diametrically opposite. I just wanted to do something as different from that as possible, a little bit as a way of laughing at the whole thing, and also as a way of providing value and just having a little bit of fun.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, many gamers, like you said, not everybody has a super rig. The narrative behind PC gaming and the fact that everybody has a $2,000 computer is obviously not the right one. So I think your channel provides an incredible amount of value for all gamers alike.
Yeah, if I could add something there, like one of them, the things that I get frustrated regarding PC gaming is that a lot of people, as I said, see it as the way to access the superior gaming experience. But to me, the real beauty of PC gaming is its immense amounts of flexibility, which is something that you never get on a console, in the sense that if you want to play it in a specific way, you likely can get away with it. And if you want to spend $2,000 and get like the most superior experience, you can. If you want to spend $200 or $300 on a budget PC and play video games on it, you still can. Like, there's a wider range of weird configurations that you can get away with. And to me, that's the true beauty of the platform.
Totally agree. I agree with you.
So was this something that was, were you a gamer yourself that had experience using low-end PCs, and this was something that you sort of got into yourself, or were you mainly just trying to help other people? Like, what kind of PC do you have, and what kind of PC have you played games on in the past?
Right. So the thing here is when I initially had the idea for the channel, I was studying in university. I had a laptop which was beginning to be outside the range of what usually you can play games with. It was a small Alienware laptop that was good 2 years before that. So and I was on the move a lot. I was about to move from like university and countries to another place, so I couldn't have a desktop. All I had was that laptop, and I was getting the very strong feeling that I was being left behind by gaming. Like there was stuff that I wanted to try, but I couldn't. So and yeah, and nowadays I have obviously a way more extreme variety of PCs. In fact, at this very moment, I'm surrounded by, let me count, 3 desktops and about 2 laptops.
Oh my
But
god.
that's because of the channel. Like for every video, I sort of try to reach a balance or build or use something that works good for that specific video. But of course, like the best thing that I got is still like a 1050. So I'm pretty much in all complete honesty, while I have been able to borrow high-end components from other people before to sort of experience that sort of high settings world, the the novelty of it wears off for me really fast. So I'm actually pretty happy with like a mid-range or low-end GPU.
That's incredible, and it really sets a good example for everybody else out there. And you're right. To be honest with you, that was one of my feelings when I started getting into PC gaming. My idea was, okay, I'm getting a PC because I can do whatever I want with it. It's basically a tool that allows me to experience gaming, media, whatever I want to do. But then I started seeing this trend in the industry where, okay, I bought this $2,000 laptop, but it's not the best because, of course, technology advances and companies are trying to push for better graphics and higher and higher and higher requirements. And how do you feel about the requirements in many of these games? Because sometimes games come out and the requirements are so high, and you really wonder, is it because of bad optimization, or is it because we really need those machines?
Well, there's a twofold situation there. I have been privileged enough to speak to some developers, mostly in the indie realm, but like a couple of people who have experience with higher titles. And when I have this conversation, usually the point that we get to is that part of the difficulty of creating a video game is selling the video game. And the thing is, visuals, like pretty visuals, sell a video game. So there's a very strong incentive, a very strong marketing incentive to try and make your game as beautiful as possible. And then seeing just how friendly you can get the minimum requirements of that game is a little bit of an afterthought. And optimization requires hours of work, and that budgets are limited, so a lot of studios might not see it as an advantage, especially if they think, oh, we are making a very hardcore AAA game. Obviously, people that are going to play this are going to be better equipped. I also think that is wrong, and there are studios, really big ones, who are very aware of the fallacy that you can fall in that topic. The 2 biggest topics that come to mind, and yes, I agree with you, like requirements are increasing a little bit faster than they should.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at examples of games such as Overwatch or Fortnite, both Epic and Blizzard are companies with a lot of experience, knowing that if they want their sort of games to succeed, they have to have as much as a range of possible compatible devices as they can. And in fact, both Fortnite and Overwatch have on their minimum requirements, I think, an Intel HD 4000 and an Intel HD 4400 respectively, which is insane. Those are really old integrated GPUs, and they work with both like Fortnite and Overwatch. And that's not free. Like they definitely put a lot of money, effort, and time in order to make that possible, but because they understand the value of actually having their game work, at least on a very basic level, on as many devices as possible. In the case of Fortnite, it makes a little bit more sense because it's a free-to-play game. But if you can Overwatch, where you have to pay a fee, it's sort of it really does pay off. and many times just allowing for support of modern games on low end PCs just is a matter of allowing more options. Very often, I find AAA games that do not support resolutions over 720, or that have an internal resolution scaler and they only allow a value like 50 or 70 or something. And those are things that usually, when you get to the configuration files, you can put whatever you want. So the question that I would make is, why doesn't the developer allow like any number under settings? That will open the door to a lot of people being able to play the game. And usually the response is, oh, because who will want to play the game like in such a low resolution when it looks so ugly? And that's a huge oversight in my opinion.
It's a huge mistake. There must be millions of people that will love to play the game in any shape or form, for sure.
Yeah, see, if something that I have learned through the making of this channel is definitely that people are willing to drop things way lower than you would expect if they want to play a game that they're hyped about, especially if it's like something multiplayer. So yeah, there is. I do think that there are companies that are putting effort into this because they understand, but for some of the bigger ones, it might take some effort. I do think as time goes on, it might get better. As people notice the success of games like Overwatch and Fortnite, it might get better. If you look into the explosion that Fortnite had and you compare it with the previous popularity of PUBG, one of the biggest complaints the PC community had and still has about PUBG is just how terribly optimized it is. And there were tons of people who wanted to play a PUBG and just couldn't. Like even at my 1050 had issues with it before. So as soon as Fortnite came out and it's like, hey, it's the same genre, it's free, and it works like on everything. Obviously, that was in my head. That was one of the reasons why it overcame PUBG so quickly.
You're right, absolutely. I mean, just look at the fact that Fortnite scales up so well on every platform, even mobile. I mean,
Yes.
you look at the iOS version, and it's pretty much the same game, just at lower settings. It's really impressive.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a lot of value in that, and as engines get better at it, and as developers see more value in it, I am hopeful that it will get better rather than worse.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the other things that I was curious about was obviously you've got lots of videos on your channel covering lots of different games. But when what's the difference between a game like Fortnite, for example, and a game like The Witcher 3? Like when you go into the game and you're lowering down these settings and making it so as many people can play it as possible, is there a big difference between each of the games, or is it pretty standard that you're doing a very similar thing to each of the games?
No, each game is its own complete world, which is why it can take so much effort to do some. Like every video that I work on, it feels like solving a new puzzle, like being given a completely new puzzle, and sometimes they have things in common with previous puzzles that you can use, but a lot of the time it's just, like for example, like multiplayer games tend to be harder because a lot of the developers put a lot of effort into limiting the options that players have in order to avoid accidental cheating. A good example of that is, I think, a previous version of PUBG will allow you through configuration files to disable like fog, or to like make grass more sparse than it usually is, which could be like a force of like someone could do that not for performance but like to have better visibility than other players. So some really good developers just have a very good limit set at what the user can put, and they still allow for a lot of customization options. Most multiplayer developers just take the brunt approach and they block everything. So multiplayer games tend to be the hardest to work with. Single player games, you usually can break into those, mod them, like get over everything. There are very clear exceptions, but they're usually easier to work with. Now, you can understand a lot the philosophy of a company towards their PC releases by just doing what I do. Because in the case of Witcher 3, well, that studio understands what makes PC good, and they allow sort of the innards of their engine completely open to people to play around with. While if you compare it to some other single player games, they usually are like ports from console or so on, and those tend to be much harder to work with. Usually, I have a set of notes of things that tend to work in engines. Like if common engines like Unreal Engine 4, the engine that Far Cry runs into, which I completely forgot the name, but I'm currently working on
I
that.
think it's Dunya.
That's correct, Dunia. Yeah. There's usually small things that you can use as info to cross from one play to the other. So I have sets and sets of notes of stuff that works in different engines, which is usually the first thing that I try on a specific game. But in general, each game can make its own puzzle, and there can be, I mean, just the example about Dunia, I have been trying to make content about anything from Far Cry 4 to the recent Far Cry 5 for so long. And that's such a hard engine to work with. And recently, thanks to someone in my Discord, we actually figured out a way to put variables into the game, which opens, after years of failure, or suddenly opens those three games, Far Cry 4, Far Cry Primal, and Far Cry 5, to being able to do videos of what I do. So it's a struggle.
I'll do the Assassin's Creed games compare, especially some of the bad ports in the past.
Wow. Well, Assassin's Creed uses the Anvil engine, and sometimes I get the feeling that every single game is done by a different set of developers, at least on the PC side, because you see games like the original Assassin's Creed that use an old version of Anvil engine that allowed for like a lot of modification. Then you go through like Assassin's Creed Unity, which is a disaster in so many levels. And the configuration file is like completely locked. There's nothing to do there. And then you go to Assassin's Creed. What's the one that happened like in London, like in Industrial Revolution London?
Was it Brotherhood?
No, I think it's Syndicate. So that Assassin's Creed Syndicate has a lot of stuff to play around with, which is like a nice surprise. Then you go to Assassin's Creed Unity, which has way less stuff again. So it's not every single one of them tends to be different, even though they use the same engine.
Amazing.
Yeah,
amazing. I just love this. This is so interesting and fascinating.
Yeah, it obviously seems like a lot of work goes into each individual video, so yeah, it's really cool to hear. So moving on a little bit, we've talked about what you do in this low spec gaming stuff, but you recently did some videos on your channel talking about cloud gaming, and that's obviously what we do over here at Parsec. So initially, I just wanted to get your current thoughts about the state of cloud gaming and how it has grown over the last few years.
Right. So I think I mentioned a little bit that on the video, but there were some early companies that tried to do experimentation in cloud gaming, which to me, that sounds very brave, because like the internet today still has some infrastructural issues that can make it complicated sometimes. I cannot imagine trying this like 10 years ago. It's interesting and it's growing, and I do think it has a spot in the sort of mainstream options of gaming that will, since it depends so much on like the user's internet connection, on the user's location, as internet technology evolves, as more developed countries get access to like high-speed fiber, as more developing countries get access to like an intermediate good level of bandwidth, I think it's going to transform into a more common way of doing gaming. But as I said, it's right now there's a lot of interesting things happening on it, but it's very the main sort of barrier of adoption to me is sort of the internet infrastructure worldwide. As that improves, then probably more and more people will give it a try.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree with you. I mean, we have lots of users from Europe, but I'm aware that there are countries in Europe. I mean, I'm Italian myself. I come from Italy originally, and in Italy, the internet isn't really the best. So there are some barriers, and we are here to make sure that we initiate this movement and we allow people to understand how useful and awesome this can be. So that once those barriers are gone, we can pretty much say, okay, this is Parsec. You have freedom. You have freedom to do whatever you want. You can just play games online. You can play local co-op games online with your friends. You can access gaming on your Android, anything. And that's our mission. And we were very happy about what you said about Parsec in the video. It was really positive for us. The entire team was like, "Oh, this is so awesome. We love Spec Gamer is actually positive about us."
Well, the thing is that what's interesting is of all the services that I tried, most are geared towards a very like easy consumer experience, which means sort of like clicking, creating your account, and then starting playing. But the thing is, cloud gaming depends on so many little options like location and latency and the codec that you use that I don't think on the current market a one-size-fits-all option is going to work. So what I ended up, I think, enjoying the most about Parsec is just that it's a very granular tool. Like you could select your hard drive where the computer is located, which service is going to be hosted at. So obviously, considering that I'm a person that enjoys being able to modify his games as much as possible, you can imagine that something like Parsec fits better in the sense that I can customize what I'm looking for better. And yeah, definitely being able to run it on a Raspberry Pi or something like that was a big bonus, especially because I'm a thinker. Like I like to experiment with devices like that, and the idea of being able to build my own little like streaming box to have next to my TV was very appealing to me.
Yeah, I mean that's what we are. We're very big on customization. So when you get Parsec, you get a tool. The way I look at this, you get a tool to basically make your gaming experience the way you want it. And you can set the bandwidth limit. You can set the resolution, of course. Not only that, when you access a cloud computer, you have your own computer. And that's your computer. You can do whatever you want in there. If you wanna, you don't have to play games. You can just use it to stream movies or do any kind of stuff. And that's the way I look at it. Because PC gaming, like you said, it's all about flexibility. So cloud gaming needs to adapt to those values. We have to be flexible. We have to allow users to do whatever they want with it. We have to allow users to experiment. That's for me the big number one rule when it comes to Parsec. Because even right now we are experimenting. Because we have co-play, which is a feature that allows you to play local co-op games online, and people are experimenting every single day. Months ago, actually a year ago, people found out they could use Parsec for emulators, for example, and now people are finding out they can play a game from 15 years ago online, which is incredible, and now they're using it for indie games coming out right now, and there's no limit. Experimentation is what makes PC gaming and gaming as a whole better.
Yeah, definitely. And the Android app also works very well. I didn't get to try the Android app for streaming through Parsec on my video because I wanted to focus on the PC side. But there's a review for something else that I'm working on very slowly. It might take a couple of months to be ready. But I tried Parsec on an Android handheld, and it made me very, very surprised of how that could be an option. And if you look at, well, there's two things. You mentioned co-play there. I think someone in my Discord sent me a link on an experiment that you guys did on co-play on the Nintendo Switch, which was very interesting.
Yes,
that definitely made me smile. And the other thing is, if you look at sort of the news if you look at the Nintendo Switch, there was a recent piece of news, was it last week or maybe a couple of weeks ago, that there's a game, I think Resident Evil 7, that is going to release on the Switch in Japan, but as a streaming game. Like it's going to be running in on
the cloud,
PC somewhere, and you will be streaming into the Switch. And that to me is like that's a very mainstream thing, which it's surprising. Because like one of the challenges that people want to one of the things where cloud gaming shines the most is basically very weaker hardware. And the Switch certainly falls on that because obviously it's a fair bit weaker compared to like other competing consoles, but it's portable. So as time goes on, definitely there will be. I do think that there will be more companies experimenting with things like Parsec or like the Nintendo Switch thing that I mentioned to sort of provide better options to people.
Absolutely, I totally agree with you. I think it's just a matter of pushing, and at the end of the day, it's good because gamers will win, and I think that's number one most important thing here. Gamers will get a better experience, and they're gonna be able to access their games anywhere. Which, in the case of Resident Evil, I was shocked when I actually read the news. I was like, okay, so Cloud, Switch, Resident Evil, Japan. Okay, I mean that was really interesting to learn about. But when it comes to co-play, one of my number one favorite thing about co-play is the fact that we're helping indie developers that don't have the resources or time to implement online into their games. So basically, a few weeks ago, a game called With Zero Legend came out, and it was actually a pretty good success. You go on Steam charts, you see there's thousands of people playing every single day. People are talking about it. It's a great game, but the game didn't have any online functionality. And just by the developer telling their fans that they could play online with Parsec, we got so many people that were loving Parsec and playing the game online, and that made me really smile and it made me really happy that we're helping also indie developers, and that's one of my favorite things about Parsec.
I didn't think about that. That's an excellent point. Yeah, because if a game has no online co-op, then that definitely becomes an option for people who still want to. I didn't think of that. That is a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, we're talking to indie developers all around the world every single day, and we're trying to help them out and make them find a way to implement Parsec. I mean, obviously, you can just do it by using Parsec, but also we're experimenting and thinking about an SDK or how can we provide online matchmaking to you without having you work for a year on it or spend hundreds of thousands of, if not millions of dollars on the development itself.
Oh, that's a neat idea. That's definitely a good business idea.
Thank you.
So you've got low spec gaming and you've got cloud gaming, but what would your personal recommendation be for players? Would it be to dumb down their settings and play the games they want to play that way, or do it through some sort of cloud gaming streaming service?
It depends on their location. If they if they live in a country or have access to a fast enough internet connection where they can actually get a good experience through cloud gaming, then it's definitely something that I would recommend. Especially, if the kind of games that they play fit good with that sort of structure, it is definitely something that I will happily recommend. But I think on my video about cloud gaming, I talk a little bit about this in the end, that if you fall outside the range, like if you live in Brazil or something, which a lot of my audience lives in Brazil, or your internet connection, like you live in a city with bad internet infrastructure, like obviously going local is going to be less frustrating. To me, as I said, to me, like cloud gaming is definitely a really good choice for like a set of people. If you're part of that set of people, definitely.
Awesome. I mean, it's good. This is great. This is great to hear, and you're an expert in the industry, and it makes us really happy. So I'm very impressed, honestly, with the way you look at Parsec and the way you look at cloud gaming. For us, this is something that we've been working on. I mean, the company as Parsec as a company has been working on this for over 2 years now, and the team knows how important it is for gamers to be able to access the games everywhere. So super happy.
Yeah. I do have a question regarding like future. Have you ever? I imagine this is a logistical nightmare, but have you ever considered the idea of releasing like an app for Switch?
Yes. I mean, it's no secret. It's no secret that it's something that people ask every single day.
Okay.
Because I reply to every single YouTube comment on our channel. And we get a good amount of comments every single day. And one of the biggest questions is either, can we get a Parsec on iOS and can we get Parsec on the Switch? So we are aware of the request. Obviously, it's not easy, but I can assure you that uh, with the amount of success and love the Parsec has been receiving, we've been pushing that idea as much as we can. And all I will say is stay tuned to the future.
Excellent. Yeah, I imagine getting it approved by Nintendo might be tricky, but I already could see like 100 people doing YouTube videos like, oh, I'm playing, I don't know, Dark Souls 3, like Crisis or whatever the heck they want on a Switch, like with like thumbnail with the Switch and the game running, and it's like actually running through Parsec or something. Like it's just the novelty of seeing a quote unquote incompatible game running on Switch using a service like that will make for a lot of interesting headlines.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is a platform where Parsec makes sense. We definitely are looking into it. We're definitely listening to our fans and customers. They're very vocal, and this is something great about cloud gaming. Cloud gaming has lots of vocal, passionate fans, and this is what has made Parsec. This has made our team work so hard on Parsec, because people that are using Parsec every day, they let us know that they love it, and we know that we have to deliver. So yeah, thank you for the suggestion.
I think people in gaming in general really like to give proposals.
Yes.
to give feedback. I'm being nice here because not every email and message I get is nice.
So Nintendo, why isn't Mario in Gears of War? Can we please have that happen? Yes, I mean gamers are really very passionate. That's for sure.
Very creative people. So we already talked about internet requirements and so on and so forth a little bit already, but streaming services for things like TV shows, movies, and video-related content as a whole has become the norm with things like Netflix, Hulu, and YouTube. Do you think we'll ever live in that world where gaming streaming is just the complete norm and everybody is doing it all the time?
I don't think we'll get to a point where it is the norm, but I do think it will get to a point where it is one of the like most common casual options. So see it this way, like Netflix or any like video streaming service, Amazon, whatever, all of this became so prevalent because the old option of buying things individually and then just like having a physical collection or something was not very practical or very useful for the majority of people consuming content, which do it like casually. Like if I'm a very casual viewer of movies and series. Like there's very, very, very few series that I will go out and like buy the DVD collection. There's very few movies that I will watch more than once. So because of that, a service like Netflix works great for me. A service like Spotify works great for me in terms of music because I don't need or feel a need to own the things or to have it in a place where I could access them several times. And once again, once the internet infrastructure globally got to a point where streaming movies or streaming music became trivial or at least very feasible, it became the norm because it's the most like casual way of doing it. In the same vein, I do think like I don't know how much into the future, but when internet infrastructure gets to a point where it is relatively simple to always stream a game, there's going to be a casual, I wouldn't say casual because that word's a little bit dirty in gaming people. I mean like hard casual, not people playing Candy Crush, but people who are willing to try like The Last of Us or let me think of a Dark Souls casually, like not the person that wants to game, the person who wants to get into video games, but the person that doesn't want to get into video games so much that is going to go out and buy a PS4 or a PC. They just want to do it occasionally, whenever they have time, and just get it done and then do something else. There's a lot of those people, and those people are not being served by the current like gaming system. So when the internet infrastructure gets there, I think cloud gaming might be the primary way for that type of crowd to play video games.
Sweet. So moving on to Parsec a little bit more specifically now, as we've already sort of established here, we're always looking for feedback and ideas on how we can improve this thing and make it the best service it can possibly be for our users. So as someone who obviously has a lot of care and a lot of passion for spreading advice that makes gaming more accessible to more gamers, do you have any ideas that you would like to see incorporated into Parsec in the future?
Make Switch app, please.
All right. Okay, let me add this now to the list because it's been mentioned before. I'm kidding. But yeah, I mean, we're definitely looking into it. I sometimes I'm sleeping and I receive comments on YouTube that are telling me about it, so I'm aware.
Yeah, if there's a second thing that I would add there is I really like the support on Raspberry Pi. There's nothing wrong with a tool that only works in a command line, but I would not mind like a decent graphical interface app for Raspberry Pi.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. In some nice UI for Raspberry Pi itself would be really, really awesome.
Yeah,
I
like
totally agree.
if I have it plugged to my TV all the time and I have it as my dedicated streaming box, like some easy way of navigating and starting up my remote machine and just getting started with that will be nice.
Yes, Okay, now that I will add to the list.
Yeah, I just see Raspberry Pi getting more and more love in general as of late. I go into bookstores and I see the magazine section and I see a lot of Raspberry Pi on the front cover of a lot of these PC mags. So it's definitely growing and definitely getting its foot more into the door of just gamers' lives in general.
I mean, they're awesome. For such a little price, you're getting something really useful, and you can use it for gaming, which to me is crazy. I mean, tell somebody they can play a video game on PC for $35. It's pretty incredible.
We just seem to have lost LowSpec. He's having some internet issues. He says he's solved, so he's on his way back in now. There we go.
He's back here. There you go.
Yep, I had a bit of a internet issue, but it's solved now. Sorry.
All good. Yeah, I was just saying that Raspberry Pi just coming more into the light as of late. I see more and more love getting shown to this. So yeah, I definitely think we could show some more love to the Raspberry Pi as well, maybe.
Definitely.
All right. So moving on to something a little bit more casual here. I wanted to ask you about your personal experience with gaming as a whole. So when did you first become a gamer and step into this foot of online and just gaming in general, I guess?
Oof, what year did the Nintendo 64 come out?
96.
96. Okay, so when I was 6 or 7 and I got a Nintendo 64 for Christmas, that's when it all started. It might have been 97 or 98. But I got a Nintendo 64 with Ocarina of Time. And after that, there was no turning back for me. I was mainly a Nintendo console owner through like the GameCube generation as well. But when the Wii generation came out, even though there's many Wii games that I also liked, I obviously started getting a little more interested in what was happening outside the Nintendo sphere, because Nintendo's amazing. I'm still a really big fan of Nintendo, as I have mentioned the Switch how many times on this conversation. I still own like all their handhelds and consoles, even the old ones I collect. But obviously they exist in their own sphere, so I grow curious about the other games that were happening outside that Nintendo area. So I bought, I think it was an Xbox 360, and I did that. That's the one and only non-Nintendo console that I have ever owned, because I very quickly switched from that to PC, because the games were too expensive. It was very hard to obtain a console or like to obtain parts if it got damaged in the country that I used to live in. That was the limitations of the console format of the Xbox were not for me. So from that, I very quickly moved to PC to play games like Assassin's Creed or Mass Effect. I have put so many hours of my life on Mass Effect 2. I think I have seen maybe not, but I have been very close to seeing every single cutscene or line of dialogue there is on that game. I really liked it. And from there, just experiences such as that. I have mainly been a single player person myself, because I didn't have gaming friends or really good internet for a long time. And that changed only very recently, thanks to this channel, because obviously this channel pushed me to play a lot of video games that I normally would have not tried. And one of those was Overwatch. And when that came out, that consumed my life. So, and it still does up to a point. So stuff like Overwatch and Fortnite.
Yeah.
And there's also, I've also developed a liking for very hard but mechanically satisfying games. When I started the channel, one of my biggest requests that people keep making over and over and over again was the original Dark Souls, the Prepare to Die edition. And I did not want to touch that because, it's Dark Souls. It's all the memes about get good and how hard it is. And I didn't like hard games. And then I started playing it and realized that people are really stupid in their way of selling this game. Yes, it is hard, but it's also fantastically well designed. Like the whole game is designed around its difficulty. So it very rarely, if ever, gets frustrating. It's difficult, but it's a good difficulty, a difficulty that sort of stimulates you to keep going. And so I also like a lot of games that give me that same feeling of mechanical difficulty. So stuff like Fury or Bayonetta or Neo or Cuphead, those I really enjoy. As I said, I'm still mainly a single player guy, but games like Fortnite and Overwatch are something that I also put a lot of time into. I'm not good at any of them. I'm decent in some characters in Overwatch, but I'm not really good.
I'm a Farah guy. I have like 200 hours on Farah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because I come from the old school shooters, Unreal Tournament, Quake. So when I saw Farah and the rocket launcher action and all the cool stuff, I was like, okay, this is my character. But you're right, Overwatch is, I think something Overwatch does is really inclusive. It's something that everybody can just jump into and find their play style and what they love, which is what makes me really happy to be an Overwatch fan myself.
Yeah, definitely. Something that you mentioned about that is that generation years ago when all big multiplayer games were like military shooters and like when Call of Duty was on its absolute like top and all of that. That's the time when I didn't also play any multiplayer games because I don't really like super serious militaristic games of we have to like fight this war and all. If a game is like stupid and silly, I end up enjoying that way more. And I also I like games with depth, but I don't like games with a lot of initial complexity. So MOBAs I could never get into. It's too overwhelming for me. But Overwatch, which is a shooter, but it's also very silly, but it's also very like you when you try an Overwatch character for the first time, it has like 3 or 4 attacks of basic options, and like that you understand what's the role of that character in the whole combat. It takes many hours to master it, but you get it very quickly. And that is the sort of multiplayer game that I like. This is also what I like Fortnite so much versus PUBG. Because PUBG is all like more serious and militaristic, and meanwhile in Fortnite you have like people asking Epic to add vehicles into the game, and they add like a shopping cart, and like that made me fall in love even more with the game.
Yeah, it's silly. It embraces the memes, and this is what I love about Fortnite. It's so silly and fun at the same time and cartoony. I was gonna ask you, you say you love Mass Effect. How do you feel about Mass Effect Andromeda?
It's I couldn't get past like the third mission. I'm gonna be honest. I was very disappointed by it because I remember that game came out the same year as Breath of the Wild, and I was really worried about Breath of the Wild because Nintendo likes to experiment with their formula, and I wasn't super confident that they were going to nail the changes. So I was worried about Breath of the Wild, and I was really looking forward to Mass Effect Andromeda. So imagine how I felt when Mass Effect Andromeda comes out, and even though people complain a lot about things like the animations are incomplete and stuff like that, which does break immersion in the game, the other stuff like the main plot, the way a lot of things are written, it's not that good either. Meanwhile, Breath of the Wild, obviously, I have put maybe 110 hours on that game. So
yeah, what a masterpiece. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nintendo's been on a roll. I'm right now enjoying Mario Tennis. There was a free demo, and geez, like even the simplest mechanics like tennis, they know how to make it fun. Like you said, make it silly, make it over the top. Don't try to be too serious, because when something is too serious, people are sometimes even scared to try. Like you said, Dark Souls, I would love to try, but either the marketing of the game or the community makes it sound like if you play Dark Souls, you're going to hate your life,
Which is very stupid because Dark Souls is extremely silly. Like with the actual community, like I have been playing the remaster because one thing that I always say is that I actually never finish the original Dark Souls. My favorite is Dark Souls 3. But now that a remaster came out and it actually performs like really well on most of my computers for once, I have been playing a lot of it, and the stuff people do online on that game is so stupid. Like I have been invaded by people with the most ridiculous names, and I have had some of the weirdest online interactions and experience through that game. And there's something fantastical about being stuck on an extremely difficult level, just trying to survive. Then you get the notification that you're being invaded, and you're like, oh, now someone here's to kill me. And when you watch the name of the person invading you, it's like, oh, whoa, what's this? You know the meme?
Oh yeah! Wow.
Exactly. So it's like, oh, okay.
it's
That I don't know if to feel like intimidated or be laughing. And Dark Souls is filled with like the community is really they use gestures in really funny ways. So I'm actually pretty fond of it, even though that's to me a pretty good example because the game itself is so dark and so broody, and then the community is so silly that it works for me.
the game is dark, but then you are invaded by silly poop 69, and
Exactly.
you're told that it's a game once again.
Exactly.
Yeah. So obviously gaming is just such a big part of your life. You've expressed your love for many titles just here, and obviously your YouTube channel is obviously a big part of your life as well. So what is it that gaming does for you, and why have you decided to make it such a huge part of your life?
Well, that's actually a pretty good question. Like, to me, it's a way of going through an experience. Even though, as I said, I still enjoy movies, I still enjoy series. The interactivity of games and the relationship of a game with the player makes it a very unique form of expression. Once I tend to dislike very cinematic, very linear looking games, like games who tell you story through cutscenes or through like very static dialogue. Because if you're going to do that, you might as well watch a movie. Like what makes a game special is that you can feel something that a characters go through gameplay. And that doesn't necessarily require the game not to be linear. Like there's a lot of linear games that do this very well, but it requires the game putting you in a position when you understand what the character is feeling. You're just not looking at it, you're living it. And that is for the side of single player games. Like I love that sort of experience, and I love experimentation and discovering and getting into a world. There's when you compare video game fandom to something like a book fandoms are fantastic because you get to. Actually, I have a very good example which I can use for both. The Witcher. I am currently reading through the original Witcher novels, which, by the way, really fantastic. Anyone who likes fantasy and wants to find a good book to read, highly recommended stuff. I haven't enjoyed a series this much since like Game of Thrones. But it's a book, right? So you want to like write wikis or something, or see fan art of the different interpretations of how this world evolves. But then you get the video games, which are made by people who very clearly love and adore the original story. And you're just not reading it, you're experiencing it, you're viewing it, you're actually being an agent on that. And that makes it, to me, much more interesting because you feel like you're just not imagining this world, you're actually inhabiting it. And that, to me, is something that only an interactive sort of media can do. That is not something like old static media can achieve with the same effect. And there's also They just, as I said before, the mechanical enjoyment or something. Like, there's this concept that people talk about in difficult video games, which is the zone, when you enter the zone, which is this hyper state of concentration where everything else around the world disappears and you became like completely one with what's happening on the screen. And games like Dark Souls and Cuphead are really good for this because the difficulty scales very slowly, in the sense that you start with an enemy and he shoots three things at you and you dodge those, and then he uses the same pattern, but he throws like the four projectiles instead of three or something. And very slowly you start concentrating on reading these patterns, and the human brain is a fantastic like pattern recognition tool. So your brain is just looking for patterns in the animations, in the attacks, on reading every single movement, trying to dodge, and before you know it, you're in that zone when you are not thinking anything else, when the entire world disappears and you're entirely concentrated on that fight. And when you win that fight and you feel that feeling of satisfaction, that is something that you really cannot get in real life. Like, you can get something very close to it when you do something like martial arts, but not this consistently and this safely. So that is something about video games that I feel it's almost therapeutic.
Yeah, that's a beautiful explanation, to be honest. I've not heard gaming explained in that sort of way before, so
it's a philosophical way of looking at gaming, which is so refreshing, and I thank you for this. It's really cool to hear. Look at gaming a different way, because often we look at gaming, I mean, not us, but many other people look at gaming as, oh, it's just a business, or it's a commercial thing, or blah blah blah. Oh, you can't have this character on the cover because it doesn't sell, blah blah blah. But then you're reminded that gaming is actually a form of art, and people look at it, and then people like you comment on gaming this way, and it makes us all very happy. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's both, right? Like,
yes.
Movies, no one will say that movies or books are not art. And yet, if you're publishing a book, even though it's like a really good book, you still have to think about what you put in the cover so people buy it. So it can perfectly be both.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I totally agree with you. And also going back to the fandom, I think gaming is one of the few things in life where you can have a developer, you can have a fan base, talk to each other. And something that really shocked me was when the Overwatch League was going on, and basically people were talking about, hey, Blizzard, can you change this character's animation? And Blizzard was playing with them on Twitter, and they actually made a GIF and they posted with like characters walking when they couldn't walk. Or
yeah, the memes. That was fantastic. I remember
it's crazy, It's such a refreshing relationship between customer and provider and the actual company that produces something. It's so different, and I think the internet obviously helps, because the internet has created this channel where everybody has a voice, and for good and bad, where everybody has a voice and they can talk to the favorite creators like you, obviously, or the favorite companies. So I love that. Fandom in gaming is like nothing else.
Exactly. It's because it's not just a fandom, it's a community. Like, a lot of people see being a gamer as part of their core identity. And it has all the signs of a community. Like, it has its own symbols, it has its own language. Like, I have had this experience where I'm hanging with a group of friends and maybe two of us are gamers, and you are talking about Overwatch, and you're like, hey, but if this person actually picks a tank, and then you have to go DPS, because otherwise you are not able to push the payload. Like, we both understand what we're talking about, but everyone else in the group is going to be like, huh? And that is, having a common language is sort of one of the big telling signs of basically being a community.
Yeah. You should have just said, I need the E-Link.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
good.
So you've talked about some of the games that you love and some of the things, some of the games that you've been into growing up and so on. But I'm going to put you on the spot now, put a gun to your head, and I want to know your top 3 favorite games of all time.
Top 3 games of all time. Legend of Zelda: Majora's Mask, Mass Effect 2, and Batman: Arkham Asylum.
Ooh,
Nice. Batman Arkham Asylum was the first video you
Yes.
made on the channel, if I'm not
Yes.
mistaken.
Oh no, it was Arkham Origins.
Oh,
I actually
okay.
did Arkham Asylum recently.
Yes,
Okay, so
that's
you,
right, I got
Arkham
confused.
Origins is your third favorite game?
No, Asylum, the first
Okay,
one.
okay. Yes. I mean, Asylum. I mean, the whole Batman trilogy was masterpiece.
Yes.
I do
Yeah.
agree with you though. I think Asylum was the best in my opinion. But all the games are. I wish all superhero games were this good, and hopefully Spider-Man this year can be the Batman of a few years ago.
Uh, Hopefully, I'm not into Spider-Man as much as I am into Batman, so that was just perfect timing, perfect character, and perfect game for me.
Yeah, I mean, Rocksteady changed the industry because until then, all the licensed games about superheroes were lackluster to say the least. And then they came out as this new developer that people didn't really know much about. They only made like a game on PS2, I think, Urban Chaos, I think it was called. And then they made the Batman games, and everybody was absolutely shocked at how good they were. So
Yeah,
great choice.
well, it's what happens when a game is not tied to a movie or something that requires releasing very quickly, and when you actually have a team that understands what makes the character good, what makes the character interesting, and like there are so many nods and so many details in the Arkham games that allow you to realize that these people have read a lot of Batman comics and they sort of understand what makes the character thick. Yeah, that was definitely fantastic.
So one final question for you today, Low Spec. To bring it back into the topic of game performance, obviously everyone here cares about the gamer and making it as easy and as enjoyable experience for the gamer as possible. So what is the main thing that you want to see from developers going forward to help make their games more accessible to everyone?
An unlock resolution scaler. I don't know. There's there's so many. Just allowing more graphical options. I think there is. I'm very surprised. I'm very surprised in how often, like, the engine of a game supports an option, supports like any internal resolution. And it's not on the menu. Like, you have to dig through it. You have to mod the game to allow it. Like, why not allow this on the menu from the get-go? Why not allow people to pick any internal resolution they want? Like, the engine can do it clearly, because if you change the configuration file, it does it. So accessibility in this kind of term doesn't have to be difficult. Like, it's very easy, and a lot of people do it online, and it bothers me a little much when people are like, "Oh, developers should optimize their games. They're so lazy." Like, as I said before at the start of this talk, optimization is expensive, and it takes a lot of man hours to do. It's not like a button that you press. It's very difficult. But adding options that your engine already supports is not. that should be already there. Or there are games that this happens often, where the game optimally only works if you're like on a quad-core CPU, or when you're over like 6 gigs of RAM or something. And the game still works lower than that on a dual core or on 4 gigs of RAM, but the developer's not completely satisfied with the experience, so they actually put code into the game that makes it so when you try to launch the game on a system with a dual core or 4 gigs of RAM, you get like an error message and the game doesn't launch. That pisses me off. That really, like, okay, the experience is not going to be ideal, but why completely close off that game from people? Like, if people want to try it and it's not optimal, allow them to do it so. Like, why is that? Just don't take options away from people. If people want to play the game and the game looks like Play-Doh and it looks like a bunch of pixels and it's like 300 by 200 resolution, don't put a block to make it harder for people to do so. Allow them. It's open up to people playing games in ways different to what you initially conceived. Because this is not a movie, this is an interactive product, and people are going to enjoy this product in ways different than the ones the developer conceived.
I totally agree with you 100%. And is it maybe because they're afraid that people might make videos about it, and other people might see the videos and misunderstand that it's actually something more of a work in progress type of feature? Do you think obviously there has to be something behind this? Either somebody's out of touch, or maybe somebody is scared for the marketing of the game, and they don't want to see possible crashes stuff like that. Because those are the two things that come to my mind.
Yeah, definitely there's a part of that, but that to me is very easy to fix. If you go put them on an advanced settings menu, and when you get into the advanced settings menu, you get a warning in big bold letters that says you're going away from like the tested area of the game. If you play around with these variables, we take no responsibility for like anything. All bets are off. Anything can happen. I see this also happening on stuff like on video game difficulty. One of my favorite games that I have played recently is Celeste, which is an indie game about climbing a mountain. That's an oversimplification. It's a fantastic video game, but it's also really, really hard. And the game on the options has a bunch of hidden parameters where you can change like how long your dash lasts, or how many times you can dash in the air, or you can basically customize it so if you're having an extremely hard time on the game, you can make it easier. But the game narratively is built, it's like Dark Souls, it's built around its difficulty. It's built around the hardship that the main character is going through, so it makes sense for the game to be difficult. So what happens when you start playing around with these difficulty settings is that you get a warning where the developer tells you, hey, this game was narratively intended to be really difficult. Change these options if you want, just be aware that you're going away from like the game design. And that is completely okay for me. Like, have it, put 3 warnings on the screen. I don't care. Make it completely obvious that the user's doing something completely unsupported, but don't take the option away.
Totally. It's like when games, when you see like a demo at E3 and it says half the footage, work in progress, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I agree with you 200%. I think, if anything, it's been very obvious and clear that gamers love transparency, and they love to be given tools to play with. So you can make more money doing that. If you're a company, there's a very good chance more people might buy the game so that they can actually play around with it. So why not?
Exactly. If you look at a very good recent example, Assassin's Creed Origins recently added a menu inside their game where you can change like everything about how the game works. Like you can change the number of enemies, the way the enemy's difficulty scales. It's basically like having access to a cheat console, but it's a feature of the game. Obviously, like you could use those settings to put the game in a situation that the engine's not going to be good at rendering, maybe too much stuff or stuff working in ways that was not intended. But hey, Ubisoft went and added that option on PC and being like, hey, play with this. You're completely off track here. You're going through an experience that we haven't tested, but here's all the engine options. So knock yourself out. That's to me the approach that should be taken on gaming. Like allowing all the options for the user to play around with, as long as the user is aware that it's actually getting out of the tested zone of performance of the game, but giving that option so people can do whatever they want.
I agree. Totally agree with you.
Yeah, same here. In complete agreement. Yeah, it's just what that's just as we mentioned towards the beginning of the show. That's what PC gamers want at the end of the day. They want those options. That's why a lot of PC gamers are PC gamers. It's the same reason Android phone users are Android phone users. They like to be able to customize and do things the way they want to do. So adding more of those options is only going to be a good thing.
Exactly.
Alright, and that brings us to the end of our interview with LowSpecGamer. I want to thank you very much, man, for joining us today. It's been a great interview. We've discussed a lot of things here today and had some really interesting conversations, so thank you for coming on. Is there anything you want to shout out and give some support to at the end of this? So you want to shout out your own stuff or anything like that? Go ahead, feel free to.
The video that I did recently about gaming on calculators is weird, it's fun, and it's sort of the thing that I want to do more because I love doing weird stuff. So go watch that. Let me know your opinion. And if you have if you want to discuss anything with me, if you want to give recommendations about the direction of the channel, or just want to talk about other people who watch the channel, join the Discord, join the LowSpecGamer Discord. One of the things that I'm most happy about is that I am not in control completely of my Discord community. My Discord community was born as a user-made thing, as a viewer-made thing. Viewers created it to discuss the channel independently from me. And I just joined, and I'm actually like a moderator there, but I don't call the shots. Like they actually pick the channels and the small details of the Discord, and I absolutely love that. And I constantly get feedback from that, and I usually prove video ideas there. So if you want to be more engaged with this community of people doing weird stuff on PC games, come join the Discord. It's fun.
It's incredible. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
All
thank
right.
you so much. We're going to get this up on YouTube ASAP, so if anybody wants to catch the replay, if they missed any of the things, you'll be able to check it out on YouTube in the coming days. Again, LowSpecGamer, thank you very much for joining us. For all that are watching, thank you for watching, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Peace.
Goodbye.